Hello people, hope everyone is doing well. So this is the final commands where tutorial for our Linux basics, and so today we'll be starting with the command known as whois. So the whois command is basically a reconnaissance tool which will help us gather information about a website or the domain. So let us do that, and we will gather information about the $0 security domain. And here we can see that we can see the domain name, we can see the creation date, the expiry date, and so on. It will give us basically lots and lots of information. So we can do another whois for if you want to see facebook.com. And now we can see the domain name of Facebook, the domain ID, the registered URL, the updated date, the creation date, and so on. Basically, again, it has given us a lot of information regarding the domain. Moving on, the next command will be traceroute. So let me clear up the terminal, and so traceroute to say Facebook dot in, and thus as we type enter, so here we can see the IP addresses of the routers in between our router and the web server of facebook.in. So these are all the numbers you see are the number of hops between a router to another to the next router. The gateway is the first router, which is my router, and then the number 2 is the router, which the request hops from my router to this router, which is number 2, and from that router to number 3 router, and so on, until it finally reaches the web server of facebook.in. So it is basically very helpful to see how many routers are in between my router and the next web server of the Facebook, and to see the IP addresses of the routers in between. We can thus find out the number of hops too. Moving on, the next command we'll be showing you is the python 3 -m http.server. So this command is very interesting in the sense that it will help us host a local HTTP server. So basically this will allow us to see to view and enter and access a HTTP website from within a network. So we have to keep in mind that from outside a network we cannot access this website. So, and if we are inside a network, so using a device we can connect to the HTTP server. So for I cannot show here the example because we are only using a machine, and as we type enter, the HTTP server is right on, but I cannot show you how to that I access the HTTP server from my system only, because we need to use another device from the same network. So we need to know that the same HTTP server cannot be accessed by the system by which it is hosted. So moving on, I do control C, and thus the HTTP server is exited, and we are back into our terminal. The next command is python 3 -m then py ftpdlib. So what does this command do? Basically, it is very similar to the HTTP server. In case of HTTP server, it will host a FTP server. So what is FTP server? So an FTP is basically file transfer protocol. So using an FTP server, we can securely transfer files from one system or server to another system or server, and it is very basically very useful in doing so, because maybe we may not have Bluetooth or Wi-Fi direct or USB cables to do so. So in that case, it is very necessary and essential that we use an FTP client and a web server, so that we can securely transfer files over the internet. Again, we cannot show you the how to connect to the FTP server right now, because we are using only one system right now. But you can test it using your own devices and computer. So it is basically very helpful for transferring files. Again, to exit the command, we use Control C, and the FTP server has been stopped. The next command I'll be showing you people is the host command. So what is the host command? The host command is basically used for DNS lookups. So basically, as we enter a domain name, the host command will give us the IP addresses of that domain. So let me show you. Okay, let me do wikipedia.org, and as I press enter, it will show us the IP addresses of the Wikipedia web server. So we'll need to know that there are more than one IP addresses for one website, right? So there can be four or more servers than one, right? So we can see that the Wikipedia website has these servers and their IP addresses are this. So it is very helpful to know to see whether the DNS is working properly, and to see the IP addresses of the web server basically. The last and the final command of our entire the course. So the final command will be nc. The nc command is one of the most interesting commands you have learned till now, because it will help us read and write data across a network connection using TCP and UDP protocols. So, and the most important thing is that it will help us spawn reverse shells. So what is reverse shell basically? So explaining a reverse shell, let us take an example of an attacker and a victim. So while the attacker will obviously try to exploit the victim, he will try to spawn a reverse shell, and by spawning a reverse shell, it will mean to gain the control over the victim's computer by gaining control over his terminal or shell. So doing that, and he can do that by the comfort of his own terminal. So by any mistake, the attacker will try to exploit the victim's system by running a particular command, which is netcat or nc here, and he will gain control over the victim's terminal. So by gaining control over the victim's terminal, he is basically gaining control over his entire system, because by running commands on his terminal, he can gain access to whatever information he needs basically. So that's a very dangerous hacking tool. And to demonstrate that, I will go to my terminal, which is XFCE terminal, and the normal terminal. So to demonstrate this, let the right side of my terminal be the attacker and the left side be the victim. So let me do nc -l -p and then any port of your choice. So for the demonstration purpose, I will do the port 666, and then I press enter. And on the victim's system, somehow the victim or the attacker, by doing social engineering, he will do nc the private IP of the attacker's computer. So for my case, it will be 9.192.168.1.103 and the port, which is 666, and press enter. So basically here we can write anything we want, and the same thing will appear in the victim's computer. So let me demonstrate. We will hack you, and by pressing enter, you can see it is automatically coming into the victim's terminal. So by this certain technique, you can have gained a partial control over the victim's computer. So this is just kissing the margins of hacking. You don't know how much you can delve deep into the system and crack it. So this is just the margin, and by this simple trick, you can type anything you want and it will appear on the victim's computer. So, and using this very technique, we can also exploit it, but I will not show it to you now, and it will be taught later by my peers and my respective teacher by the respective teachers of $0 as well. So this is the end of the session of the basic Linux commands. I hope you all enjoyed it. I will severely encourage you all to try and run these commands by yourself on your own system, because unless you try and I have already said it before but I will say it again, unless you try and run these commands on your system, you will not learn it. Unless you try bring out your computer, start typing, do the commands, run the commands, and unless you do those, so basically you will not learn anything. So unless you do, you need to do those, you need to practice more and more, and then you can finally get into hacking, which will greatly impress you and surprise you simultaneously. So by that I will end today's session. I hope you all enjoyed it, and thank you all.